Rejoice, everyone. We're back with another Sekhie Reacts to Fate.
Today we're doing...
Tezcatlipoca.
There's no L at the end.
Polka.
It's not polka.
Everybody Pokemon.
Do the polka. Yeah, we're starting with Tezcatlipoca. So which Tezcatlipoca are we starting with, Knick Knack?
Of the four?
Red, white, blue, or black?
Today we're mostly going to be going over black, but yes, that is something that comes up.
It's good to know it comes up. I needed to know that. Because you didn't give me... I didn't have anything special to look up. This is just Tezcatlipoca, correct?
Yeah.
Just so normal. Not like Kukulkan or T.H.E when we did them, which was a little bit more of a clusterfuck. So...
T.H.E wasn't a clusterfuck at the time.
It is now.
It is now. Like, if we were to do T.H.E today, it'd be like T.H.E, Kukulkan, or fuck that.
But we did cover Ort when we did Kukulkan.
Kukulkan.
Yeah. We kind of got lucky that we did T.H.E first and then Kukulkan so much later. Or did we do them in the same year or 2 separate years?
2 separate years. T.H.E was like towards the... Like, we were still recording in there.
Were we?
Yeah.
Shit.
I think we recorded it on the same day as Romulus Quirinius.
Oh, fuck. Romulus Quirinius. God, that video gives me anxiety to think about. You know what I mean?
Why? Because it's like one of the most unfiltered, unhinged moments you've had on the channel?
No, because of the snafus with recording it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because 40 minutes in, I wasn't monitoring how much space I had left on my computer, and I didn't have a hard drive at the time. 40 minutes in, the fucking... My computer got so full in terms of, like, space, like I didn't have any memory left, it crashed my entire computer. And then we had to, like, restart the computer, delete a bunch of stuff, and then do the rest of the recording after that. Yeah. And we thought we'd lost the first, like, 40 minutes.
We lost, like, 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, 2 minutes right in the middle. It did not matter. Anyways. Tezcatlipoca. So, as we said just a second ago, technically, there's 4 Tezcatlipoca in Aztec mythology, right? And by that, we mean there are 4 characters who bear the title, essentially, of Tezcatlipoca in Aztec mythology, but they're not all Tezcatlipoca. So this is we're going to Tezcatlipoca Prime. That's what we'll call it. This is the Prime Tezcatlipoca. Or called Tezcatlipoca, is one of the central deities in the Aztec religion in Mesoamerica. Much like Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl, rather than being associated with very firm concepts, which he is associated with some like firm things, but he's also associated with more conceptual things like conflict, you know, hurricanes, the night sky, or like obsidian, a good representation of a thing he's associated with, versus conflict, right, which is much more abstract. So he is one of the 4 sons. So the 4 Tezcatlipocas are the 4 sons of the dual deity, the primordial dual deity, Ometecuhtli and Omecihuatl. His main festival is held on T.H.E and it involves human sacrifice. And a very interesting... Did you look into this? Does it matter?
For what, though?
Like his main feast day. Because I looked into it. Like Tezcatl.
So, sorry. This might be going over my head, but I think it does matter. Can you... So
his main celebration day is Tezcatl. That's like his festival. And in Tezcatl, in the festival, what happens is a year before the festival, a warrior is selected from captured warriors, right? Or volunteers, but usually captured warriors. It's considered a great honor. And for a year, that person is like fed, clothed, dressed, provided for. He's married to like a beautiful woman. And the person who's selected needs to be like free of blemishes, right? Like no wrinkles, no moles, no warts, no like huge scars. Like it needs to be like a sort of prime, sort of like undamaged man who's a warrior who's been captured, right? It's a great honor even for the captured warrior. And so for a year he lives this like really privileged life because he is a stand-in for Tezcatlipoca, right? He is a physical representation of the god on earth, and then on his feast day he climbs to the top of the temple, and according to what we know, he is then sacrificed and he is consumed, right? And it's all part of the Tezcatl ceremony. Of Tezcatlipoca's feast day.
1 year to live like a king.
But I mean, once again, to a very religious population, it is an honor to be selected, you know? Like, this is not like a punishment. It is an honor. Anyways, I just was wondering, because I did look into it. I was curious about it. I didn't know if it mattered.
It doesn't matter specifically, but it's not worth noting.
Okay. All right. That's wonderfully vague. Thank you for that.
I'm sure you might be able to make connections with that, maybe.
Oh, okay. So I do want to... There's a couple main things that he's symbolized with. We're going to kind of get into that later. But something interesting to note is that modern, like, mythologists, historians, anthropologists, there's some theories about how to trace him back earlier than the Aztecs, right? Because the Aztec is sort of a late stage civilization compared to many of the others. Like, you think the Aztecs didn't fall until like the 1500s, right? Like AD, you know? And like the Mayans were around in the AD period, right? Like 300 to ish. So like this is very late for us. So it's odd that we don't have a whole lot of sources. We've talked about this before, but there's a few codexes. We'll talk about a couple of them. The codexes are really all we have to go on, and many of them were destroyed by Catholic priests, right, in Mesoamerica. But so there are similarities between Tezcatlipoca and a deity of the T.H.E Maya named T.H.E, who's represented in the Popol Vuh, which we talked about before. The name of that deity, T.H.E, it means obsidian, like it's related to obsidian, and he's also associated with sacrifice. And then there's a Maya god who we call God K, who's also been known as Kawil, who's depicted with a smoking obsidian knife and one leg replaced by a snake, which is notable for the way that Tezcatlipoca is represented in Aztec mythology. So there's a possibility that this is sort of a continuity of a deity known by different names and known to different people by different names. But it's also just possible that Tezcatlipoca is the Aztec version of the Olmec and Maya jaguar deity, right? Because jaguars are closely associated with Tezcatlipoca. It's one of the forms he takes famously, and one of the reasons why his face painting is in that specific color. Right? So Tezcatlipoca's name itself means smoking mirror in Nahuatl, directly connecting to his connection to obsidian, something he's the god of, because in Mesoamerica they made mirrors from obsidian, right, rather than glass and silver as we do in other places, or in ancient Greece and Rome it was bronze that was like polished, so they used obsidian to make mirrors. But those mirrors were also then used in like rites of prophecy and shamanic ritual, which means that Tezcatlipoca was by association to obsidian and mirrors also associated with divination, right, and supernatural arts like that. There's too many epithets for me to really go over, and I don't think it really matters to go over like all the different names that he was called by different people, because they're all just titles, right? We discussed this a little bit when we talked about the Greek gods, but that's how you get like Apollo Iakinthos, right? Or like, you know, Artemis or Athena Chalcidice or whatever. It's like a title assigned to this person representing who they are to that person at that time in that circumstance. So they're all Tezcatlipoca, but it's Tezcatlipoca doing different things at different times in different places.
Daenerys Targaryen, Mother of Dragons, Queen of the Seven Kingdoms.
Oh, yeah. King of the Andals and the First Man, Lord of the Rhoynar, Mother of Dragons, Khaleesi of the Great. Exactly like that, actually.
That's probably the example I used back then, too, like to connect the concept.
I don't know. I can't remember, but that is exactly like a perfect example of like what's happening here. So, I guess let's talk about the way that Tezcatlipoca looks first, right? Like according to traditional art. So we've got art of Tezcatlipoca from multiple of the codices, like the Codex Borgia has it, and so do some others. So famously, what distinguishes him from many other deities and makes him identifiable is his unique face paint called Tezcatlipoca. But it's a specific horizontal bands of black and yellow, right? Which some people say refers to the jaguar that he's associated with, because the jaguar's got the kind of black and yellow coat, right? But it can also be used to differentiate himself from the other three Tezcatlipocas, namely Quetzalcoatl, Huitzilopochtli, and Xipe-Totec, because their colors are white, blue, and red, right? So him being yellow and black differentiates him from white, blue, and red as a primary color when represented in art, right? Because there is some confusion over like which gods are represented where in some of these codexes, because they might not be labeled, or we haven't translated the labels correctly, or the labels have been destroyed, and so you're really just looking at how they're represented. And if two gods both have the same color face paint, it's really hard to tell them apart if there's no other distinguishing features. Typically, the parts of his body painted on the color depends on the depiction. So like often like half of his legs, some of his arms, or the majority of his legs can be painted in combination with his face. And the black that he's painted with is actually called Tezcatlipoca specifically. He also has symbolic objects he's represented with. So his right foot is often replaced with either a mirror, a bone, or a serpent in relation to the creation story we're going to talk about a little bit later, right? Because those are all the symbolic objects that relate to him. And then in the case of the serpent, it relates to the story itself, right? Because it relates to Tezcatli, another character we've already talked about when we talked about Kukulkan. And I remember that we talked about Tezcatli. He's also often wears like a big crown, right? Made of like feathers or obsidian knives or flowers. And often has an obsidian mirror in his chest, like either in his chest or as part of his breastplate that he is wearing, right? Sometimes it's also smoking, because, you know, his name, the smoking mirror. So that's interesting. He's also usually depicted as a warrior, right? His breastplate, shield, weaponry. He has a nose ring made of an arrow in some art, which is pretty cool. And I think it's pretty interesting. So he's definitely depicted very often in terms of his association with conflict, right? And consider the person who's chosen to be a stand-in for his sacrifice is a warrior always. So heavy connotations with conflict. But also remember that in Mesoamerica, conflict could both be ritualized and sort of normal and brutal, right? Like there were people who just went and killed each other in war and fights, but there was also ritualized combat, which was another aspect of the culture between city-states and between different groups of people.
Need a minute?
It's one of those things where like, I went on the biggest rant to my mother the other day. Because remember, last month we did French characters.
Yes.
Right? And we've done French characters before. And remember, I was really struggling with the French characters, right? Because I was like, how? I don't remember learning about, right? I went back over every single history class I've ever taken, right? From 4th grade to now, right? Only to discover that I was never formally taught continental European history between about 600 and 1800.
You brought this up during
Yeah.
one of our French episodes.
Yeah, you're right. The irony is then I have taken Mesoamerican classes, so for me this is much more familiar. So I don't need as much like help with doing the research and finding the information. So I have more on this than I did on some of our French servants in terms of like how much investment I have in the knowledge of the material, which makes it a little more, taxing for me, because I'm trying to remember to say a bunch more things. No. My straw.
It also means you have to read from your notes a lot less.
Yeah. As you can tell. Beset upon by a plague of misfortunes. Am I? Okay. There is on one of the codices, namely the Feyaveri Mayer Codex. It has a really big image of what people for a lot of time thought was Tezcatlipoca. Like it's a very beautiful, crisp, large image, yellow and black face paint. But on this codex, the figure has 2 unaltered feet. And there are gods who do have similar face painting, right? Like, so Huitzilopochtli has been depicted in black and yellow, and so has Xicotencatl. So it's this might be Tezcatlipoca, but it's likely that it's not, based on the fact that they don't have the symbolic replaced right leg, and that there are other gods who would fit the portrayal better. So like I said, whether or not all the portrayals we have are actually Tezcatlipoca, or there's more that we've mislabeled, we don't know. So it's really gonna depend. So Tezcatlipoca is often depicted with as a rival of Quetzalcoatl, right? Our culture hero of Aztec mythology. There's a couple different versions of sort of the creation story and their conflict, right? But basically, if we go with the later myth, let's talk about the later myth first. So there are 4 gods who create the world, right? They're Tezcatlipoca, Quetzalcoatl, Huitzilopochtli, and Xipe Totec, right? The black, the white, the blue, and the red Tezcatlipoca. So they were all the sons of Ometecuhtli and Omecihuatl, the Lord and Lady of Duality, right? And that's what kind of creates the world and the people in it. So the two of them, Quetz and Tez, had a rivalry, right? According to the legends of Talan, Tezcatlipoca deceived Quetz, right? And at the time, Quetz was the ruler of a legendary, beautiful city, right? And because of this deception, Quetz was forced into exile. And so that's kind of one of the earliest myths of their conflict, is this deception over a city. But both of them are often shown to be collaborating in different creations, and both are parts of the creation of life across multiple different creations. So in a lot of ways, the older myths really depict ideas of sort of change through conflict, right? On a larger scale. Like the conflict of these two people is what causes change in the world, right? So in the creation story, Quetz and Tez join forces. They create the world, and before they create the world, there is only sea and the primordial earth monster called Tezcatli. So in order to get her, Tezcatlipoca uses his foot to bait her, and she eats it, hence the missing right leg. They then capture her and essentially tear her apart, like mold her into making land from her body for their creation to live on, right? They then create people, and people had to then offer sacrifices to comfort Tezcatli for all that she was suffering, having been forced into the form of land. This is why we see him with the missing foot. After this, Tez turns himself into the sun, right? As a result of this, the subsequent ages of humanity are called the ages of the 5 suns, right? This is the 5 creations. Unfortunately, though, because remember, Tez and Quetz worked together on this, and Quetz was pissed off that Tez took the place of the sun. So he knocks Tez out of the sky with a stone club at this point, right? Because of this, Tezcatlipoca is incensed. He's very angry. He turns into a jaguar, and he destroys the world, the first creation, right? So the first creation, destroyed. Quetz then replaces him as the new sun, starting the second age of the world, repopulating the earth, right? Tez then overthrows Quetz, causing him to send a great wind that destroys the world, and all the people who survived are turned into monkeys, right? In the third world, Tlaloc, the god of rain, becomes the new sun, creates humanity. They worship him, right? But his wife is stolen by Tezcatlipoca, right? So he is angered. He decides he will not. He threatens to let no rain fall for years and years, and then in a fit of rage, he makes it rain fire. Right? The world is destroyed once again. The people who have survived turn into birds. Right? It's the 4th creation, and then
this feels like that Robin Hood Men in Tights scene where the town jokes about how it's destroyed in every single Robin Hood adaptation.
Oh yeah. Leave us alone, Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, Tezcatlipoca, the rain goddess, becomes the new sun of the 5th world. But Tezcatlipoca says some really mean things to her. He basically says, "You're only pretending to be nice, to benefit yourself." And so she cries, and she cries, and she cries. She cried a river and drowned the whole world.
Stop destroying the world.
And those who survived were turned into fish. So like the 5 creations, the 5 suns. I mean, not even indirectly, directly, every single one of the 5 creations was destroyed by either Tez, Quetz, or Tez and Quetz fighting. which I think is hilarious. Don't you?
You had a good thing going the first time.
I think it's great. I just think it's so funny.
Leave us alone, Tezcatlipoca.
Yeah, so we talked about the feast of Tezcatl. I think that's really it for me. I mean, that's the story of Tezcatlipoca. That's him and Kets and the creations, right? So he, a god of conflict, right? Of the night sky of obsidian, one of four, sort of the first four children of the creator primordial deities, and just closely associated, like one of the major gods of Aztec religion.
I guess just going into this. What class are you thinking here?
What was Kets?
Rider.
Kets is a rider? Maybe a saber or berserker?
Okay.
I don't think they're both riders. I could be wrong.
So, Tez's class is assassin. I'll get into it a bit here. It's complicated. Actually,
All right.
It hurts my head a little bit.
That's an interesting art style. I'm very curious as to who.
This is a controversial servant artistically, as far as the design. Not the design, but the art, the artist, the card art it goes.
Is it just me, or does this look a little bit like Laputa?
Kind of, sorta.
A little bit. I assume that's supposed to be like Aztec-inspired art.
I don't know. This is not one of my favorite arts. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, go into the sprites to see what they're...
That's a gun.
Yeah.
That's an axe?
It's a gun. Let's go into the sprites.
Okay. I can see how that might be questionable. So it's Jaguar inspired, obviously.
Yeah.
This is. And he's got the right foot's fucked up. I guess I'm assuming that's made of obsidian, is what it looks like. And smoking.
Probably.
Because that would be the connection. If it's smoking obsidian, it's directly related to his name, right?
I'm very curious to hear your thoughts here. Feel free to put them out unfiltered, because this is a servant that has inspired a lot of discourse.
Okay. Well, hello, and welcome to an addendum.
You gonna remember to put this addendum in the video itself, unlike the Galahad Grill bit, which you had to link in the description?
Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, bitch. No, this is going in the video. Actually, you guys are going to see this before we get into the original discussion we had about the art for this particular character. So, obviously, this is Tezcatlipoca, and we're specifically talking about Tez's third art, right? Which you had brought up to me, and you asked me kind of like my opinions on it in general,
well,
right?
I guess, I don't know if they'll have seen the response, but you had a very initial, like, you could see it on your face, you had thoughts in your mind.
Yeah. So I wanted to include this addendum a little bit before I get into my thoughts here, because there's a point, right? So I do go decently into depth when I'm looking stuff up, but sometimes it's hard to acquire books, or like just hard to find copies of research that's done. And I don't typically, this is one of those things where like I wasn't really thinking I'd be looking up Tezcatlipoca's clothing, because clothing in mythological art can be kind of funky, like especially several hundred years later. But because of the way that the first, second, and third art look, I couldn't shake my curiosity, right, over whether or not this is an accurate representation based on what we know, right? And so, so there's this book. So this book is called Mockeries and Metamorphoses of an Aztec God, Tezcatlipoca, Lord of the Smoking Mirrors. It's by a man named Gulheim Olivier. He is a doctor of, I think, Aztec mythology. I believe he teaches in France, right? Like French native. And so this book is actually not really easily available, right? So it was originally translated in 2003, so he only publishes in French. So this is his work translated into English from 2003. At the time when we first did this video, I tried to find a copy of this online, but Internet Archive was having like DDoS attacks for like all of October or something, so I actually couldn't find a copy online. And I found out that my old university had a copy, but I no longer had the ability to go to the library, so I actually got a friend to check it out for me so that I could read it, right? Because Gulheim Olivier is really the only person writing about this, right? And I looked. There is not really any other English literature on the way that Tezcatlipoca, like what he wore and what his priests may have worn, right? Because that's the secondary thing here, is maybe what his priests wear is what this art is like based off of, if that makes sense, you know? So I went in and I found this, and it's interesting. Okay, so looking at the clothing of the priests, right? The descriptions that we have from Diego Duran, right, which is one of the kind of earliest descriptions we have of it, and there's the Spanish here, but I cannot read that. So white surplice adorned with tufted border reaching his calves. Over that, a sleeveless jacket of red leather, similar to a penitent's garment. And then instead of sleeves, wings and long ornaments with ribbons suspended. And perforated holes and gourds. So that's a description of the clothes put on some of the young girls in the temples to Tezcatlipoca, right? And so obviously that does not really look like what we're looking at in this description. It does say that some of the priests of Tezcatlipoca would wear so they did a dance called the Jump of T.H.E, right? Where they would put conical paper bows and white turkey feathers on their heads. Smear their lips with honey, wearing paper loincloths with feathers of the same bird, right, the white turkey, and spiral motif paper decorations. So this doesn't really fit that. There's also a fair amount of literature that describes them as wearing a lot of black body paint. But from what I could tell from the descriptions in this book, that black body paint covers the majority of the body. So it's not just a little stripe at like the top of the head or the eyes, right? So based on that, I do think that like this is inaccurate to a large degree. I don't think that this is really a good representation, right? Because it says that they married priests would cover their entire bodies in black, right, when they were guarding the temple. And the thing is that mixture that they use, this special black mixture, is actually really important to the worship of Tezcatlipoca, right? So it doesn't make sense for them to only cover little bits of the face. So I don't think that what's depicted here is accurate, but I think there are some elements, you know, like the loincloth and the feathers, right, that make sense for like ritualistic wear. It's just the color seems to be off, and then sort of the general composition isn't correct, and a lot of the other bits are like more sort of stylized and added on. So I think on the whole, I probably was correct in my original assumption that this is based on the sort of image you have in your head when you think of like Mesoamerican priests, right? Because and that image is stereotype, right? That image is a stereotype, and it does lean a little bit more towards like the sort of dramatized and rather unflattering portrayals, right? But I don't think it's deliberately malicious upon further research. Like, it was very hard for me to get a copy of this research, right? So it was not easy, and there's not much in here. It's a very small section of the book, and it's very much, this is what this person said this long ago. Let me translate it to you exactly, and then explain what I think that means, right? So I certainly don't think that it was deliberately insensitive or stereotypic. I think it just so happens to be one of those things where there's just not a lot, and what is there does lean towards
the stereotypes.
Yeah. If that makes sense.
Still, though, what you had made for a fun reaction in conversations. I'm curious to see. Like, this is just so that to temper people. So if
yeah, which is why it's going in before, because after this little section is over, which is going to be in a second, you will see my original reaction and description,
which is a little bit stronger than this one is.
Yeah.
We just want this here so that you assholes don't comment right after that goes up. Well, actually,
or like while I'm still talking.
Yeah.
Anyways, so enjoy the rest of the video, and we'll see you in the new year. First of all, and I think this is where I want to start. I feel that this is a really bad first art to have, because do you know what this looks like to me? And not to put too fine a point on it, but this looks like a white man standing over conquered native land that has been razed and destroyed, right? And I understand, right, that the background of this card art right here is probably supposed to represent the destruction of one of the five sons, one of the five creations, right? Like, that's likely what it's meant to be, a destroyed world, right? Such as the ones that he destroyed. But at the same time, this is a white man with blonde hair wearing traditionally Western clothing, right? And I mean, like, Western clothing in the sort of way that this is like sort of a fantasization of how Western settlers might have like dressed, and how people sort of dress in that part of like the Americas, like white people specifically, right? And I don't super appreciate that. I know I know what this is. It's a representation. There's a particular type of breastplate sigil thing that he wears here. It's called like an anhua kitl or something. And that's what it's supposed to be. So like, I do know what that is. I said, this reminds me of, more than anything else, it looks like one of the giants from Laputa, Castle in the Sky. And even the background kind of looks like Laputa, Castle in the Sky. I didn't even catch the tail at first. This is definitely an obsidian leg. I was right there. And this is sort of, it's kind of like, it feels to me like a knockoff Black Panther, first of all. Right?
That was a joke. A lot of people were doing like the really bad white Black Panther edit.
Yeah, first of all. Second of all, if this art behind him is supposed to be representing like Aztec art depicting him, because look, there's the big nose ring I talked about. It's not hard to find images of what this stuff looks like. And it wouldn't have been hard to just put an accurate stone carving in behind him. Like, we don't have that many images, but we have the images. You could have made that, right? Also, once again, it's a white man, right? I don't love that.
Ketz was white too, though. So
yeah,
Ketz also had the white blonde thing going on.
But Ketz didn't feel so. Can I pull up Ketz's design real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because something about Ketz didn't feel like this. Which wiki am I looking for?
Either one's gonna be the design.
I think it's this one I want. I don't just want Ketz. I also want Kukulkan. Just type it in. I just want Kukulkan specifically. All right. So, right. Let's start with Ketz. The difference, I think, for me with Ketz, right, is that, first of all, the first art we see, right, this is a representation of a temple in a jungle, right? And I would bet you that I know which temple that is. That is probably how it looks from a certain thing. The other thing is, when we looked back at like some of the art, this is relatively representative of some of what's represented in Mesoamerican art, right, per se, first of all. And second of all, even though we haven't, and once again, this was incredibly accurate, right, with this weapon and the shield, like, even if it's a white person with blonde hair, right, the accuracy of everything else in representing sort of at least what is recognizably, identifiably Mesoamerican is there, right? That's not what I see when I look at that, right? This is different, right? So first of all, that. And then the other thing is, and obviously we have not gotten yet to, you have not told me about Tezcatlipoca's personality, right?
Yeah.
But from what I understand, largely, first of all, Ketz is, the way that Ketz's character plays does not feel like it's trying to make fun of or make light of Mesoamerican mythology, right? Even Samba Ketz is a direct reference to like an actual like political joke thing that happened like in Mexico, right? Like it feels like it doesn't feel like an insult. It feels like kind of a tongue-in-cheek sort of haha, like this is funny, right? Also, it's not impossible for blonde people to be born in Mesoamerica. Like that's not blonde is just a hair color, right? Like blonde people can be born into any culture, to be honest, right? And to be fair, Aztec is the Mesoamerican culture with the most genetic admixture with white settlers, right? Like not through good ways, but it is, right? Also, the way that she evolved, is that the same way that Tezcatlipoca evolved? With the like the dinosaur shit and all that crap?
That is the implied origin of all of the Aztec gods. That they're not the traditional like what the other gods or human belief made them. They're like there's a part of human belief giving them power, but another part of it is like space virus stuff.
So, but this feels like a more respectful representation of that, right? Like this feels like a respectful way. Not, and I don't mean like this is 100% accurate. I just mean that this is more.
It's easier to look past the anime tends to have.
Yeah.
Just.
And then in the case of Kukulkan, right? First of all, this was a big space sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, second of all, that's actually a great way to do the dragon inspiration, I think, right? With the feathered serpent, because that does look like the headdresses and the feathered serpent, right? And third of all, this is just like, it's like animeized modern cowboy stuff, right? I'm not mad at that, right? But modern cowboy stuff is different than what a biker wears riding into town. You know what I mean? This is knockoff Black Panther, but a white man. And you could have done better with the stone art, right? You could have. It was an option, right? This is... This feels like a direct reference to some of the incredibly racist and inappropriate movies about Mayan rituals of sacrifice and religion, right? I think you know the movies I'm talking about. This feels like a shitty reference to that. I don't know if it is. I don't know if that was the inspiration or the intention, but the way that it is represented certainly feels that way. And the sprites don't necessarily help. Like this is still a white man painting himself in kind of, once again, I don't know if this is what the priests wore, right? I don't. But this feels like what I would have seen. What was the name of that movie? It was, there was literally a movie about like human sacrifice in the end, Apocalypse or something? Apocalypta?
I don't know off the top of my head.
But it was really inappropriate, right? Like the long and the short of it was like the movie is very offensive, and it perpetuates a misrepresentation of Maya and Aztec culture, right? Because there's a reason why so many people, when you mention to them Aztec or Maya culture, their immediate thought is, the people who were cannibals and who sacrificed humans, right? Yeah, they did. That wasn't the only thing though, and it was a very ritualistic practice that people were honored to participate in and volunteered to participate in. This is not the only culture in the world that has sacrificed people. Famously, people have been sacrificed in the Bible to God, right? And kind of perpetuating this idea that this is a savage barbarian culture that eats people and kills people for their gods is not the way to go when representing a people that have been systematically misrepresented and oppressed for a very long time and have had their cultures destroyed, right? Because we talked about this in the Christopher Columbus video. It was bad. Incredibly bad.
I think I kind of understand, because in a lot of, if I go to, Native American Trail of Tears, so there's a lot of standalone policies that were meant to further the white man's power, not necessarily in actual like written out attempt to eliminate this group altogether.
Whereas in for example, there are some places in South America where the Spanish went in, subjugated millions of people, and then worked them to death in the mines to mine gold to send to Asia so that they could participate in the Oriental silk and gold trade. Right?
Like
this was not building communities and creating colonies. This was systematic enslavement and murder in the name of profit. In South and Central America, a lot of the system of slavery is tied in with haciendas and encomiendas and mining.
Get the gold, send it back to Europe.
Yeah. And so I don't know the inspirations behind this. I don't know. Cause here's the thing. We do know some stuff about like priests of Tezcatlipoca and temples. We do have some knowledge of them. I would hesitate to say that is accurate. It does look more like... It kind of looks like that one movie I'm thinking of that I can't remember the name of, which was incredibly not appropriate.
I'm glad that you're speaking about this, because this is something that like this is one of the bigger discussions I have seen surrounding like fake controversies. Is there a portrayal of like I just in the car earlier today I was joking about how they kind of fucked up the portrayal of like modern USA North American history. They've definitely like that like a much more serious conversation is how they've kind of backlined like both Mesoamerican, and then prior to the Lost Belt coming out, this was called the South American Lost Belt, and
this is Mesoamerica, not South America.
Exactly. So there's Maya, a lot of
Aztec,
like
the Maya, the Aztec, the Olmec, all of that is Central American. I say South and Central because Spain was active in both. And so the example I was using was Spain. But South America would be Inca and then a lot of smaller native groups. Like you're not getting Aztec and Maya in South America. They are two distinctly different places and culture groups.
Lost Belt 7 has a lot of controversy like that, Charnie. I'm not saying Lost Belt 7 is a bad story. I've heard it's pretty good. But there is a lot of controversy around its depiction of South America, Mesoamerica, and its figures.
This is Nahui Mictlan.
Yeah.
Yeah, which even calling it South America when its name is Nahui Mictlan, which is that's Nahuatl language for the Mayan and Aztec underworld, which is not repeated into the Inca.
They stopped calling it South America at some point, I think, but the damage is kind of already
People
done.
See it as the South American Lost Belt now, yeah. And it's distinctly not, because South America would mean Inca.
This isn't something that continued into the when they started promoting the Lost Belt stuff in the U.S., I don't think. I think that was largely when they first were outlining Lost Belts at the start of Part 2 in JP.
That's fair. And in a way, to give credit where credit is due. So remember how I've been complaining that I was distinctly unfamiliar with continental European history during that period, right? And part of the reason for that is because continental European history during that period is like, if you're in the United States, you learn United States history. You learn world history as it affects the United States, and you learn United States history, right? You don't really learn much about Asian history, right? When you're in the U.S., unless you seek out those classes, you're not really going to learn them, right? I talked to my mom. She grew up in Russia, right? She did not learn South and Central American history, right? Because why would Russia teach South and Central American history? It doesn't matter to them, right? So to a certain extent, right, I can't imagine Japan places a large educational focus on teaching South and Central American history and mythology, right? Keep in mind, like when I say that South and Central America contributed to the trade in Asia, right? That all went through the Philippines, right? So the Spanish ships would go from South and Central America to the Philippines, right? To Manila, right? And from Manila, they would then go on to Asia, right? To then be everything to be spread out from there. So it's, I can't judge someone for not having been taught that sort of thing in school and then not pursuing it further, right? I never took a class in Central European history of that time period because I didn't realize I hadn't, like, in my head, it wasn't something I felt like I was missing, right? Like, I didn't think about it. It just wasn't something I was taught, and it wasn't related to what I was studying. So I can't say, oh my God, educate yourself, you should have known better, right? Because I should have known better. The fact that I had never learned about Napoleon before a couple of months ago, that's insane, right? Even if Napoleon is Central European, it's still an important turning point in European history, which then affected American history, right? Like, at the very least, I should have learned that. And, it's my fault that I didn't seek out in college once I realized I was kind of, like, aware of the loss, right? So I can't expect, like, a Japanese artist or like, character writer to be incredibly well versed in this kind of thing, like, just starting off. But what I can expect is that if you are representing a deity, right, of someone else's culture and religion, that you can at least put your own effort into looking into it, right? It's not hard to find information on the Aztec codices. There's not that many, so there's not even that much information to go through, to be honest, first of all. And second of all, I can expect that you would attempt to not perpetuate harmful stereotypes about another culture, because I bet a Japanese person would not be super happy if I depicted, like, Amaterasu no Omakami, right, as, like, I don't know. It's
kind of hard to critique
because they've already.
Fate's definitely done some crazy shit with their Japanese characters.
Yeah, but like, if I were to depict something of Japan in a very negative light,
I think you would have. The problem is, like, a lot of your biggest issues are things that are born from atrocities done to Mesoamerica. You would have to, like, I think you can be tongue in cheek about a legend and a story. Mm-hmm. That's usually fine. It's when there's an atrocity, like if you were to make some tongue-in-cheek joke about Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah.
In fact, like Barbenheimer.
Yeah. The Ketz feels more like a tongue-in-cheek joke because it feels more like, look, this is definitely Aztec, Maya. Like, this is definitely Mesoamerican, like, very heavily inspired. The colors, the look, the weapons. But the character is like, what's it called? The wrestling? The
Lucha Libre.
Lucha Libre! And it's tongue-in-cheek, right? In the way that the character acts.
There's a lot of inspirations that aren't necessarily Mesoamerican as much as they're, like, the general area through history.
And obviously, like, you have not yet told me the sort of stuff behind Tezcatlipoca, so maybe some of my current complaints
I think the first design might be remedied a bit, but I 100% am with you on that final design feeling. Like, I even think on just the general artwork, it's the worst design.
Is that the name? Yeah. Apocalypto. Look, so this movie came out, I think it's like 2006 or something, and it is generally considered to sort of be one of the worst depictions of Mesoamerican, like, culture, right?
And
it's bad.
I do want to be a little bit fair. Like, it's obviously absolutely worthy of critique. Mm-hmm. I do want to be as fair as possible to not the story, because the story writer is separate. The story writer writes regardless of the design. The artist, though, I do want to be a little bit fair here on. You did bring up that they're Japanese, so they probably didn't have the same education. Yeah. And a lot of these concerns are very, you have to be in that general sphere, because Japan, you're not going to have the internal retrospection. You're not going to that Europe or America has to have.
I was going to say also, all of Asia did not have the same, like, the slave trade doesn't affect Asian history the same way that it affects American and European and African history, and so in a lot of ways I would not be surprised if it's not really taught or focused on in schools as more than like, oh, this was happening in the Americas at this time while something else is happening over here.
Like, the slave trade was brought up in the Columbus video, and I assume that kind of stuff gets brought up because America, USA exports so much of its culture. You're gonna see that.
Yeah.
This is not the kind of thing USA exports nearly as much, and even
South and Central America don't really export their culture on the same level as America, point blank.
And that movie you just brought up was 2006. That was not that long ago. No. And let's be honest here. Some of the biggest like this isn't Mesoamerica strictly, but like Indiana Jones is a big American export that will culturally affect depictions of other cultures across the world.
Indiana Jones also has some very damaging portrayals of the cultures it visits, right? Like India in the second movie that's not very complimentary.
Which one was the fourth movie that they visited?
The fourth one is the Amazon, I think. Yeah. So the same thing. I have the same problem with depictions.
I can see how like pop culture may have diluted the general research on the other side of the world too.
Yeah,
because of American cultural exports.
Like
this is not a lambasting of the artist. I'm sure the artist didn't go in intending this, but
it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, because. And it's unfortunate because even if it was completely unintentional and accidental, people, you know, somebody like me would make that connection and would make that assumption, right? You know? And, you know, there's every possibility I'm wrong, right? And I would fully own up to it happily if I was wrong. And that was, in fact, not the case. And this was actually very accurate. If it's like, I don't know what priests of Tezcatlipoca wore, right? I don't. So.
I also think it doesn't necessarily help that the art of the card art especially is just not... It's so out of line with what FGO normally does.
It does look very
It kind of loses that, like... You can kind of pass Cats off as, oh, it's anime. Anime does, like...
This feels more like art than anime.
Yeah.
And that kind of... You judge art more harshly than you do anime because we give anime a lot of passes for being horny Japanese shit. For, like, no offense, but we do.
So, I'm going to get into the lore here if we've said our piece on the design enough.
I think so. You know what? I know the comments are going to chime in on this now that we've been off on it for a couple minutes. So, like, I would love to hear what other people think, right? Because I know we have viewers from all over the world. And, like, I don't want to be I'm not down on the artist in particular, and I don't really want to be down on the design if I'm just missing something.
Has that artist done anything else? Like, this might be a good one, because...
Yeah, because that would be a good thing to ask right now. All right. Oh, yeah, because Kamazots was fucking great. I loved Kamazots. All right. Designed by Tajima Sho. Tajima Sho is Tez and Dinosaur King, who I do not know.
We'll get in. Dinosaur King's actually going to come up today. That's
okay. Would you say that the card art is of a similar look?
There's no card art for that one. There's a design, but there's no card art. So.
All right. So Tajima met Takeuchi, leading to his first work for Type Moon, which was an illustration of Gilgamesh for the 15th anniversary. I wonder if we could find that image. 15th anniversary Gilgamesh. By Tajima Sho.
Think I found it.
Is it this? Oh yeah, this is it. Yeah. Okay, so at least the kind of pale, not a lot of dark lines, more artistic. Like that's definitely
it's the person's art style.
Okay.
I just think it didn't necessarily jive as well with FGO. It looks out of place.
No, it does look a little out of. It looks like more of what I'd see in like the little extra art box.
Yeah.
Than the actual like card arts, which is because the sprites were so brightly colored.
Like the sprites look like completely different designs.
Yeah, because of the colors mostly. But yeah, okay, that makes more sense now a little bit. Okay.
And I know people like the Tez artwork for nothing else because of the style. They like it as a stylized piece of artwork. Mm-hmm. But like that's where a lot of people chime in is the stylization of it. Something catch your eye?
Well, so have you read the development of the character?
No, not.
Okay, so what I'm reading here, right, is that Tezcatlipoca was not originally planned to have a large role in Nahui Mictlan. His screen time was originally about the same as Kamazot's. His role grew larger as Nasu learned more about Latin America and what kind of god Tezcatlipoca was, as well as after he saw Tajima Sho's design. So Nasu liked this design and then gave him a bigger role in the story, right? Which is interesting to me. So it wasn't just... Apparently, all of the designs went through several revisions, but for the third ascension, Nasu and Takeuchi told Tajima to just go nuts, design whatever he wanted, which resulted in the giant skeleton mecha, but it was too big to be used as a playable character. So they asked him to go back to the drawing board, and then that art was used as his NP.
I know.
So originally, whatever his NP looks like, which I'll see later, was his third design, right? And then it had to be reworked because it was too big. which is interesting because then that means that then the third art is something that was added later. Right?
It might have been last minute.
Yeah.
Which, like, 'cause I think of the 3 artworks, like, just as artworks, it's like the roughest one to me.
Yeah, it's the most different as well. Okay. All right, I'll scroll back up.
Good thing to cover, though, since we're talking about a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, just lore.
There are 2, though, isn't there?
I think he has one with the mask on.
Oh, it's just zoomed in. Okay.
Yeah, they have the
that's what
artwork.
I was looking for.
Like, if you didn't know that was supposed to be Tezcatlipoca, it's good, like, stylized art.
I think for
just
me,
except for that third one.
Yeah, it's just this one. And like I said, if someone were to come to me and be like, hey, so like you might have missed this like historical article or 2 where someone said, this is what they wore, then I'd be like, oh, I was not aware of that. Okay, that looks great then, right? I'm just not sure that is historically accurate. And if it isn't, it reminds me of some really nasty portrayals. And there's a decent chance this is the sort of thing, right? Like, this is the sort of thing that's like becomes when you see stuff like this, even if you don't understand the context, those designs and the way that looks, it gets ingrained in your head. So it's like it is entirely possible that like an artist, right, with no knowledge of the actual context of whether a depiction was like bad or good or not, right, saw something that got super popular, right, because that movie Apocalypto or whatever, it was like well distributed when it came out, right, saw something like that and was like, oh, that's kind of a cool character design, right? And it just sat in the back of their head percolating, like no actual, like you wouldn't necessarily, like there would have been no prompting for you to like go look into it and that sort of thing. And then it eventually influenced
knowing
depiction.
that this design is a later inclusion, if you go back to the first design and ignore the background, because those are, I think, done last.
Yeah, and even actually, I kind of like that the background is there at least to represent like the death of the world.
Like, it's the character combined with the background that catches you on this first design. But if it was just the character...
It's vaguely reminiscent of Kukulkan. I don't hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, this one's more an unfortunate combination.
I was going to say, it also doesn't help that you put me on edge a bit by asking for my opinion, because then immediately start...
I asked for your opinion because I saw your immediate, like...
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the third art.
And I knew this art was, in the first place, controversial.
Yeah. But, like, you know, even like me, I was just kind of like, you know, I don't love that. Then the minute you ask for it, my brain starts... like, I wouldn't have necessarily gone that deep on my own.
I didn't expect you to go that deep, to be honest. Because at first, I knew you might. Going into this. But my immediate thought was, if she has any comment, she might have a comment on the art style being just so out there.
Well, I think the art style necessarily being so out there, it's a little bit odd, but keep in mind, one of the first servants that kind of shocked me was Mozart, who has a very out there card design.
And I know you have strong opinions when you have art styles that you aren't driving with.
Right?
Yeah.
Regardless of what he's wearing, I don't particularly like this. It's very washed out, and it's a
watercolor art style, and it's just not what we expected.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing is, like, as someone, you know, with the educational background I have, my first 3 anthropology classes were taught to me by someone who was a person who worked in the Maya world, right? Like someone who worked with Mayan mythology and stuff like that. And so he often used Maya, right, as examples in his class. You do, right? When you specialize in something, you use that as examples. And I ended up taking an extra class from him all about Maya, Aztec, and that sort of thing. So then I had even more of it drilled into my head. And then when I moved from community college to university, obviously because we're living in California, right? West Coast and, you know, America, we have very liberal education focus, and my department was focused on Native stuff. And because I didn't really want to take a bunch of classes in Native American history that I wasn't going to use, right, because I have to pay for classes, I took a bunch of courses from our Mesoamerican specialist who focuses in Mesoamerica. So then I took a bunch more classes talking about the Maya, the Olmec, the Aztec, the Inca, because I was like, well, these classes, at least I can make like societal comparisons to the ancient world in like Europe, like developing societies and stuff. So it's like, and obviously one of the things you talk about in those classes are the way that this stuff is portrayed and depicted and represented. So it's sort of, I've kind of been already immersed in this idea of like representation.
You knew the ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
That maybe not necessarily everyone would.
Yeah. Yes.
which I think is fair because I see a lot of this stuff like secondhand from the conversations going on online. But yeah, so lore, we need to get onto the lore at some point.
It's only been 52 minutes.
So right off the bat, oh God, this is gonna give me a headache. So Tezcatlipoca is our second Grand Assassin, taking up the seat
Hassan
after
is the
King
first.
Hassan left to join Chaldea.
Valid.
But even more confusingly, he was not originally Grand Assassin. He was originally Grand Berserker.
So I was right when I said Berserker.
Yeah, he was originally a Berserker servant and then took up this seat to become Grand Assassin.
Okay. Wait, so he was Grand Berserker?
Yep.
And then... Oh, is he our first Grand Berserker?
Yep.
Oh, is Herc not a Grand Berserker?
Herc's never been a Grand Berserker.
Oh.
Herc's just a really, really strong Berserker.
Okay. All right.
I call him the Grand Headache.
All right.
But as far as canon is concerned, I don't think Tez has appeared in Chaldea. So unlike Hassan, I don't think he's given up the Grand Assassin seat quite yet. But he is already fully summonable in game.
Okay.
And apparently, I believe I saw somewhere that his normal class, if he's not being summoned as a Grand, is Ruler. I don't know.
Actually, well, no, hold on. I can see it once again. Like, I know Ruler is more of like a saint thing, right? But no offense, what's more saintish than becoming the sun to lead an entire creation of people that you created?
Fair enough.
I mean, I'm not like, you could make that argument, and I would not really bat an eye.
It's just the amount of
Don't you always want more servants to have more possible classes?
This isn't a possible class. This is supposed to be he's ruler that's also Grand Berserker.
Well, he's
Grand
ruler
Berserker.
that is a Grand Berserker that
And then
decided
also...
to be Grand Assassin.
Yeah.
A man of many talents.
It's just best not to think about it too hard. I'm gonna let fate be fate with the class here.
Okay.
Like Ketz, he is a pseudo-servant technically, but unlike her, he's not inhabiting a living human, but rather an artificial body he created himself.
Okay.
So fate does absolutely bring up the four Tezcatlipocas. Fate actually says
but
that
they don't define them as like four different gods.
They are four.
But okay, keep going. Yeah.
So they're
because the way I describe them to you is that they are four different deities, right? Huitzilopochtli, Quetzalcoatl, Tezcatlipoca, and Xipe Toltec.
So it does actually bring up that. That's what I was going to say next. Is that Ketz is considered one of the Tezcatlipocas. This is
Which
not
one?
White. The white Tezcatlipoca. This one that we see here is the black Tezcatlipoca. We'll actually see the blue later, and red is a little bit complicated.
Okay, so they're not Huitzilopochtli and Xipe Toltec?
To my understanding, all four Tezcatlipocas, like in like life, like as life as being a god gets, would have been four separate gods.
Okay.
But I'll get into some of that again later. For now, yes, Ketz is the white Tezcatlipoca.
Okay, all right.
But as far as like why he's dressed the way he is in that first artwork, he is like Ketz, a fan of modern culture, but unlike Ketz, who likes lucha libre, Tez is a bigger fan of modern weaponry, adapting to a lot of them when summoned.
Hence the gun.
He's generally speaking pretty cruel and cold. The solution to most of his problems is for him to put a bullet in it.
I know what that first art reminds me of now. Ares, when he shows up in Percy Jackson, the first book. Because he shows up looking like a biker with like the... Yeah, that's what it reminds me of.
So, his solution to most problems is to put a bullet in it. Someone hurt his friend? Put a bullet in it. Someone, a friend bad-mouthing family, put a bullet in the friend. Someone hurting a friend, put a bullet in the person that hurt them. And... Let's see here. So, and then...
Wait, I got this. Put a bullet in it.
Yeah. See, all problems can be easily solved with a well-placed bullet. We do not actually advocate use of well-placed bullets to solve your problems, as they rarely actually work.
Yes.
It would be a stretch to say he and Kukulkan are actually enemies, so much as...
well, they're brothers.
They're sibling rivals that get on each other's nerves.
Because Kukulkan and Ketz are like... Kukulkan is like potentially an aspect of T.H.E.
Yeah.
And Tezcatlipoca and T.H.E. are siblings, according to Aztec mythology, along with T.H.E and Huitzilopochtli.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, the kind of sibling rivals that will avoid doing some things because the other does them and do some things because the other didn't. Thus the dress. T.H.E. is wearing more like a...
traditional.
Yeah, and he's like, nope, I'm just going to go fucking all modern. Fuck you. Okay. That's the reason for that first artwork, is it's a middle finger to T.H.E.
Okay. So like, T.H.E. with her fucking, obsidian sword, and him with his gun. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Most of what you're telling me is sort of mediating any displeasure I have with at least the first art.
Yeah, I figured at least the design.
Yeah. And the second art I don't really have an issue with to begin with. I've seen them do weird futuristic things, and it does look a little bit like Laputa, and I do like Laputa.
It's just a bit like, it's hard to look at when Black Panther exists.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What's older? I'm kidding. I was making a joke about the Jaguar Man. And Mesoamerican mythology. We'll move on.
So yeah, that's what I've got here lore-wise. If you want to go through relationships, feel free.
All right. Metztliapan, my cute little sister. She also calls herself Huitzilopochtli. If her level of humidity was a bit lower, I wouldn't have to think to say as her older brother. Fuck! Mexico City is built on old Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan was the Spanish... It was a lake, right, with like marsh growing land on top of it. It's a very specific thing. We'll get into it when we do Tenochtitlan. But the Spanish were like, let's fill that in, and they essentially created a giant sinkhole marsh, and then built Mexico City on top of it, and therefore Mexico City is literally sinking into the ground year by year because they're built on the fucking marshy ruins of Tenochtitlan. Hence, humidity as a comment. Sorry, we'll get into that in the Tenochtitlan video. All right. Yo, Coatl, what's with the old-fashioned looks? Did you come to make me laugh? You, who love new stuff, are learning from the past? I love the Azteca, and above that, I love the culture I raised. I fight just like in the myths. I'm not a fashionista as you say? Why you got a nice figure, so get changed. Here I thought I could worship Birdie's Latino style. Quetzalcoatl, did you get addicted to body language? Nice. Looks like the forgetful bird brain is alive and well. Somebody has not added Kukulkan's line here, although their name is here. So presumably that means that there is a line.
I'd assume they're released in the same chapter.
Yeah, we just don't get to see it. Jaguar, I don't really think I chose the wrong person. You're good like that, probably. However, why do you have a relationship of intuitive understanding with Quetzalcoatl? Could it be that you became one of her followers? The Jaguar is America's strongest, smartest, and most divine beast. Therefore, I'm an avatar of the Jaguar. Got it? Be conscious about the smart part. I mean, Jaguar is... That is his thing. He did turn into a jaguar. Old man, I succeeded to the grand name through a connection with the mountains, but this is alone, okay? Next time I have to finish up something, just give it up at once. So that's to Hassan. The storm border's nice. I've always wanted to operate a battleship. Hey, can we have a serious business discussion? Don't be so harsh. You now may not, but you as a young adult are an acquaintance of mine. Okay. Yo, Professor, you got a management advisor in Chaldea, don't you? Then how about you hire me as a management advisor, too? Who would be the best if it's you? How about we settle down and talk? Okay. Solar eclipse, a blocked sun, the sun's shadow floating in the night. In other words, a smoked mirror. Light or dark, I have a bond with you, beast. So how about you wear leopard ears from now on? That was Tekoyan, Sky of the Darkness. And then we've got one for the light. Much obliged for the stocking of weapons. Can I pay the bill with cacao? That's a no? What? Don't make a face like it's the end of the world. Now we're fellow assassins. Let's get going.
They bond over guns.
I'm gonna be honest, that actually endears me slightly more to the servant, because I think that would be hilarious to watch. You know what I mean?
It sounds like you're fine with a lot of the lore and the stuff that's being written here. It's just some of the design here, choice here are questionable.
I think at this point, I'm currently at the point where I would just like to hear... I would like to hear from the artist what their thought process behind the third design was, right? I'm just curious at this point. Like, I'm not going to jump down anyone's throat. I would just like to hear, like, the justification or the reasoning for it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
So, abilities. He's actually considerably weaker than most servants due to possessing a human body. It's so indistinguishable that Kukulkan actually can't tell the difference. Instead, he has to make use of two things. Special abilities and guns. One of his favorite abilities is the ability to just rip the heart out of his enemies. He can also change into his Jaguar armor, which changes him to be a ruler class servant, where he acts as the red Tezcatlipoca. Mm-hmm. Another fun wrinkle is that only a Tezcatlipoca can kill another Tezcatlipoca. Fun little bit of fan speculation. In Babylonia, Ketz inexplicably survives the suicide attack against Tiamat.
Oh, because she can't die.
Tiamat is not a Tezcatlipoca.
Yeah, because she can't die to Tiamat.
So that's my.
So you see what this means? This means I need to get Tez in Fate so I can use her in Babylonia. I'm joking. I know that's not how that works in this case.
So yeah, that's. You can look the rest of this over. There is skills somewhere in there.
Yeah, they're down here. I saw them a second ago. Interesting. Alright, so yeah, Warrior Tagasa. Alright, it's a black sun. That's the obsidian. I mean, most Mesoamerican mythology has like a very heavy connection to the idea of like solar eclipses and stuff like that, and they have like a huge amount of like knowledge about the solar calendar, so that makes sense. Tezcatlipoca, I believe, actually he reigns over a specific day in the calendar. I think it's like 1-10. I've got it in my notes. Hold on. Because like each of the deities has like specific days in the calendar that they are more in line with than others. And in the case of him, it's Trecena 1 Ocelotl. Ocelotl's the word for jaguar, but also has a connection with those days that are named Acatl or reed. Let's see. Charisma of struggle. Okay. Heart of the mountain. King of the Jaguars, giant jaguar. We love that. All right. Noble Phantasm. So I'm excited here because I see the name of the first one. First Son Xibalba.
So this NP is, and I believe I'm correct here, Tez manipulating the laws of the world itself.
Well, because in the first Son, the first creation, Tez is one of the two creator gods and becomes the sun, which is the most supreme deity in that world. I will also call back to Kukulkan, the Lost Belt ones. Yeah. NP. One of them was Last Son Xibalba. Yep. So I don't think they're actually connected in Fate because Kukulkan has the weird alien space stuff going on, but it's a fun little parallel there because Kukulkan and Ketz. Yeah, because like I said, Ketz is the no. So Tez takes the first creation. Yeah. Ketz takes the second, right? And then there's Tlaloc for the third, the other one for the fourth, and then the water goddess for the fifth, I think. Something like that. Mm-hmm. It's hard to keep them in order. I'm not great about them. But it takes a lot out of Tezcatlipoca to pull off his NP. And in his first ascension, he pulls out the weird skeleton death mech or something like that. Yeah. And so when he's using that's the black Tezcatlipoca, and the red Tezcatlipoca, he draws on his underworld power, which seems to be effectively bringing the underworld to the earth. That makes sense. I'm looking down here, other capabilities. So proper human history labels Tezcatlipoca as a war god. Kamazotes kind of deems it sort of like paltry because he does everything. Remember, Kamazotes is like a lost belt thing, so... Yeah. But still, that's fair. But that's what I was saying in the beginning, is like, yes, he is attributed as god of conflict, but he's also attributed as a god of a bunch of other things. And the god who is the god of the son of creation is like the ultimate god of the pantheon for that particular creation and all the people created during it, right? So it doesn't really matter what he's the god of in that creation. He is the ultimate god, point blank, period. So you could pray to him for anything, theoretically. Anyways, I just thought I'd mention that. Yeah. Interesting. One of his main temples is actually in Mexico City near the Templo Mayor. Which means it's in Tenochtitlan. Okay. We already took a look at the development and creation, so I don't need to go over that. So you have an NP for me.
Yeah, so there should be 2 different versions for different outfits.
I've got one video, so he's in his first outfit right now.
He should switch over. It's one of those, like...
Or we'll switch partway through.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the winds that blow to end the creation. Rain of fire. Now I'm just waiting for water. You know, a flood. Does blood count? Although once again, I say I'm waiting for rain because of the one rain goddess. He's the god of hurricanes as well. That's water adjacent and related to flooding, as we have seen in the last couple of weeks. I put some mask on there. I think the animation's next. And then we should get the other outfit.
That was supposed to be a design of Tezcatlipoca at one point, I guess.
Valid. I mean, I think it's not inaccurate that in some ways he is represented by things that are connected to death. I mean, remember, his leg can be replaced by bones, you know? So it's his third art. Well, he's got different animations for it. Just drop a sun on them. Hang on a sec. That's what I thought.
What was up?
The background kind of looks like the under catacombs under Mexico City, where like the old Tenochtitlan is, when they started like excavating it.
Probably intentional.
Yeah, because they found huge temples under the ground.
Because this is not an existing background from earlier in FGO. This is specific newly for Tezcatlipoca.
Yeah. You know, a justification I could take for him looking like that in his third art and me not really having a problem with that? What if, so you're saying he built his own body, right? What if he just built a body befitting of like one of those sacrifices that's kept for like the year leading up to his festival? Never know. Anyways, gonna move forward to the NP. Which is different. Oh, well that looks cool. What the fuck? But that looks cool. That's not fair. Alright, I see you've got a couple other things for me?
Yes, so first we're going to get into that dinosaur king thing I brought up.
Okay.
So this is the dinosaur king. This is the blue Tezcatlipoca that presides over he presides over a paradise.
Yeah.
He is the king of the dinos within the Lost Boat and seems to like teasing Quetzalcoatl. I don't have a lot to go over with him.
Quetzalcoatl. the third sibling.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have a lot to go over with him right now because I haven't read LB7, but I feel like if I feel like I missed something when I do eventually get around to reading it,
updates.
We'll talk about him more in updates.
Fair.
On a similar note, is
Kali.
Kali is a character that I don't want to go into too much detail, but I do need to give special mention to him. He is a Tezcatlipoca in training. So Tez is basically fashioning him to be a Tezcatlipoca.
I also see who that is.
Yeah.
Moctezuma.
You saw that. So that's where I'm like...
The fall of the...
But the problem is we don't have a lot to go off of on him because this is a Lost Belt version of that character.
Yeah.
So there's not much to go into here, and I don't want to cover the character in too much detail right now. Just give him the special mention. This is a Tezcatlipoca.
Yeah.
In training. So similar to the I assume this is a reference to the this is the reference to the sacrifice of
the Tezcatl?
Remember you said that there was the like the captured warrior
yeah. But why would that be Moctezuma? Moctezuma was the king who ruled when the Spanish conquered.
This is a completely separate timeline altogether. So.
Okay, then maybe that. Yeah, then maybe Tezcatlipoca in training.
Like I can't say for sure if that's what's going on here, but
yeah, okay, that makes sense. That makes more sense. All right.
So next, Tezcatlipoca is a cryptor servant, and he is a cryptor to our second to last cryptor, David Sem Void.
Oh, in our last video, he was the dude that was facing off into the distance without his servant being shown.
Yeah, he is technically the final cryptor of the final Lost Belt. We skipped over the leaders for now.
Yeah.
So, David has kind of retroactively become one of the very important characters in FGO. David and his father were researchers in the Clock Tower's Department of Lore. They were looking into an item called the Angel Artifact. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, by the way, huge spoilers for LB7, and even that has implications through FGO itself. So... if you want to remain unspoiled, please hop off now. But they're researching the Angel Artifact, and one day while researching with his father, something happened, and for, I believe, 5 minutes, all Magecraft in London froze and became unusable. When everything was done and the Clock Tower would find David, they had no record or memories of him ever existing, except that he was with the Clock Tower for 8 years, despite only appearing to be 10 years old. No other survivors were found, and all records of who was doing research was lost. David would stay with the Clock Tower as a prodigy, except he had a few problems. He no longer felt human, and in exchange, he gained a great power and a great curse. The power is implied to be the ability to peer outside the universe. And the curse is that every day he can only remember a total of 5 minutes of what happened for long-term memory.
Oof, that sucks.
And this is the part that's going to have huge spoilers for FGO. Like, this is even spoiling parts of part 1.
Okay, so, y'all, step off if you have not completed Nahui Mictlan and associated cryptor stuff.
And if you care about spoilers at all,
yeah,
go.
Get the fuck out. You've got 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So David would be recruited by Marsberry and Numisphere as a means of peering outside the universe. One day, though, Marsberry would confide in David an as of yet unknown plan that would secure human order, but cause something terrible to happen. So David realized he needed to stop Marsberry and destroy Chaldea, as it meant the destruction of the world, as whatever Marsberry was planning would have made him and humanity an enemy of the greater universe. So David would surprise Marsberry by shooting him in his office. If you've seen like some of the FGO anime and stuff, and Marsberry getting shot like in the prologue, that's David shooting him. However, this wasn't enough to stop Marsberry's plans, with the events of Cosmos and the Lost Belt supposedly falling into place for it. So we have yet to learn what the plan was, but David was so against it that he would seek to awaken Ort in order to destroy the world and save the universe. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm going to end things for now, but...
okay.
So yeah, that's David's deal.
Interesting. Alright. Question... oh, I forgot about the Dream Strikers, but that's okay, they're right here. Grail League. Oh, batter up. And Dream Strikers. Oh, that's cute. Little paw print on his shirt. Oh, So he does have some more illustrations by the artist. That's mildly disturbing, but I kind of like it, you know? Interesting. Sort of all the different things related. Footpick. And a Nahui McGlan image. It's always the footpicks, people. Alright. Mask of Warriors. Okay, so that's a pile of weapons, a whole lot of bullets, and his Jaguar mask. And an untranslated, extremely long CE. That is going to be unpleasant to read out of the Google Translate.
Translate page.
Othelome? Jaguar Warrior. Othelome feels wrong. Maybe Ocelotl? I think
Probably.
That's supposed to be. Jaguar Warrior. As its name suggests, it is a strong warrior who fights with the spirit and the power of a jaguar in its body. This mask is proof of that. No matter what era or body you are in, I will unite you with your inner spirit animal. Tonal. Okay. Well, there are other warriors in Central and South America called Quautin who use eagles to fight. Actually, this one is more synonymous with warrior, but you can forget about that. It's okay to dislike weapons, but don't forget your weapons. I am the god of war and the symbol of kingship. He maintains tradition, is moody, but is loyal and keeps his promises. Even if you are a weak warrior, I will not let you down. Let's look for a weak breakthrough. I respect those who are willing to prepare for battle. Like a beast sharpening its fangs in the darkness of the jungle, this mask will make your blood boil. But there's one thing to note. I'm the god of jaguar warriors, not the jaguar god. I'm the same snake god as Quetzalcoatl. Feathered snakes are said to bring about fertility. The jaguar was the most powerful sacred animal in Central and South America, and the most revered god was associated with it. Translation could have done with some work. I think maybe in the future, maybe make a note to return to this and see if it updates and see if the translation gets done on here, because that was not.
In theory, it should be done by
ideal.
updates because T.H.E launches at the end of this year, so.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say because that was not ideal and it didn't make a whole lot of sense.
I'll make a note to revisit T.H.E.'s Bond CE.
Yeah, that note might be extended to all of his CEs because the next one is also not translated.
Is it long?
Well,
because none of these are gonna be translated because he is a brand new servant.
Long enough.
Comparatively.
So this is his Valentine's return gift. What is being poured into the high-quality glass is not alcohol, but rather muddy hot chocolate. It has an exquisite sweetness that will wash away your fatigue, a mysterious bitterness that will keep you from getting tired of the sweetness, and a strong fighting spirit that will make you feel hopeful and have a solid future. I think this one suits you better. It's okay to let go of the anxiety and fear about the future caused by inebriation until you become an adult. His appearance and behavior are scary, but his caring nature in the name of guidance is unmistakable. It was God.
Much better.
Yeah. Better translation. Summer break. Okay. You know what he reminds me of? Fionn and who did we just see? Fionn's artist also did this other character, bunny suits, long blonde hair. Just recently did them. Recently. Had to have been.
Long blonde hair, bunny suits.
I was commenting that the two characters look... Well, you might have to look up Fionn's artist, because it's one of the other characters they did.
D'Aon?
Yeah, I think that's it, yeah. Yeah, this he would fit right in with the two of them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. In terms of looks, he really would with the long blonde hair. Oh, so this one's translated. The long barrel is pretty good. Not only the power, but also the accuracy increases. To be honest with you, I have the best feeling right now. I can definitely knock down the target. I'm sure of it. You want to know what happened to my right leg? It's the long-awaited vacation, after all. Gotta tidy up my appearance to fit the vacation. Although it was just a stop that the Black Sun stopped by on a whim, it seems that he found a toy that he liked more than expected, so now he is very pleased. I do have a full-body version of this image from the artist. So we can see, the whole thing. Somebody mentioned that they changed the way that they did the arts, and sometimes the extra art is here instead of in the gallery.
Mm.
Yeah. Right, Satellite Station 2324. Oh, so that's a whole group of people. I see Hans Christian Andersen, and there's him.
Don't know her yet.
A whole lot of characters I don't know. Yeah, so we'll skip that. We'll be back, I'm sure. And Capricious. Ooh, fuck me up. Whatever is it? Is that a candle? Oh, I thought it was a cocktail. I was gonna say that could fuck me up. Like it's bright pink, but no, that's a wick. That's a candle. I love the bears behind him. He's obviously in some sort of like store.
That candle looks like the pizza skulls we made a while back.
It does. Shoot, we should have made pizza skulls. I still have time. I could make pizza skulls for Halloween. Oh, this is voiced. Turn the voice down.
なんだこいつが気になるのか悪くない目の付けどころだ素材にはこだわったからな気に入ったのならくれてやるどうしてかってお前さんの神はそれを語るほど野暮じゃないだろう
What?
No, go ahead and finish CE.
What? This one caught your attention? Not bad spotting this out. I was very particular about its materials. If you want it, I will give it to you. Why am I doing this, you asked? Your god isn't so boorish to be talking about this kind of thing, you know? A sudden gift made by the Black Sun. Would this be a trial or a pampering of his? The god remains capricious as ever.
We have 2 recordings this coming week we can do pizza skulls on.
What days are they?
Well, one's a recording and one's we're doing a live stream.
Yeah, well, it's gonna have to be Thursday. Yeah, it's gonna have to be Thursday. Yeah, anyways. I think if you had asked me the question about how I feel about his design at the end of the episode now instead of at the beginning, I would have had a very different opinion. Well, I probably wouldn't have gone so far and so deep.
I didn't want to color your opinion on the design with the lore when I asked that, and with the general development history, because it's okay to have that base design, and like your thoughts on seeing that design, they are good to hear here.
Yeah, and I cannot deny that seeing the third art did immediately sort of trigger a, I don't know if that's really the portrayal you want to keep with.
I can ask you, like, was that the last CE?
Yeah, that was the last CE.
I can ask you now, like, what your thoughts are overall now that you've seen everything with this character.
So, first of all, I don't really have an issue with the first art anymore. Makes sense. It's the same principle as Kukulkan. I get it, right? To be honest, it wasn't that bad to begin with. I just didn't particularly like the art, and that's, once again, more of the artist's style. It's just not a style that I, in particular, would, like, seek out. I'm not a big fan of, like, kind of pale watercolors like that, first of all. Second of all, second art, other than, like, the fact that it's pale watercolors, and, like, we made the joke, like, white Black Panther, but first of all, it's not a panther, it's a jaguar, right? And second of all, jaguar warriors and the association of literally people in Aztec, both Iztec and Maya and Olmec, like, mythology of people who wear, like, jaguar masks, or, like, Jaguar Man, the deity, is long and storied, right? Like, this is absolutely not a ripoff of Black Panther or anything like that. Like, there are literally Jaguar Man masks we have made of jade, right? That were like worn, right? As, like, death masks or by people. The Jaguar warrior is an actual thing in this mythology. I have no actual issues with that, right? As far as the Black Panther joke, yeah, you can make it once, but, like, it is a jaguar warrior, and it is an inherently Mesoamerican thing, right? Like, this is what it is, right? What the panther is to perhaps Africa, the jaguar is to South and Central America. It is the big cat that we have in the Americas, and it is actually a terrifying predator. There's a reason why they revered these animals. You do not want a jaguar stalking you in the middle of a fucking forest, because it will win. Like, point blank period, right? The third art, I still have my hesitations about the third art, and maybe that's just because of kind of like the gut feeling in my stomach that it feels very similar to more sort of today what are more negatively viewed depictions of sort of this part of the mythology and, like, the history, because we already don't know a massive amount about like the Aztec, right? Like a lot of their codices and histories were destroyed by the Spanish. Their cultures were ripped apart. All of this was like heavily obscured, right, in history. It's very hard to find a ton of information about it today. And it's possible that this depiction is one that is fairly accurate, but it is also equally possible that it is not, and it is in some ways representative of a pop culture representation of the Aztecs that is more negative in terms of the effect it has on what people think of when they think of the Aztecs. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And though I think one of the things is, like, obviously I cited Apocalypto. Apocalypto, I think, is supposed to be about the Maya, but like people confused it with the Aztec, or maybe it's the other way around. It's supposed to be about the Aztec, but people confused it with the Maya, or the movie itself confuses the two cultures. And I know I've mentioned both multiple times today, and I'm not ignoring the fact that those are two separate cultures. The Maya and the Aztec are not the same culture. They are not cultural continuations. They are two different cultures of people, and actually, as far as we're aware historically, two genetically diverse groups with different languages. But the Olmecs, the Maya, and the Aztecs, living in the same areas, often reusing some of the same like architectural styles and stuff, did have similarities between their deities, right? And their myths had similarities. So there was a level of cultural mixing kind of going on here, right? But like, for example, the Aztecs looked at Teotihuacan, and they thought Teotihuacan, according to what we knew, they called it the city of the gods. Teotihuacan was abandoned centuries before the Aztecs rose to power, right? So this is not contemporary, right? This is not one culture evolving into another. This is two separate peoples who, by sort of cultural osmosis, that's not the word. There's a word for it, but like trade shares cultural bit, yeah. But like, so like some Mayan centers survived longer than others, and some went out very, very quickly, right?
Is the trash taste one cross-pollination?
Similar. So like, you know, you trade with these different people, and maybe so like the main Mayan heartland, it like falls out of use. People don't live there as much anymore. The Aztecs take over, but there's still like a Mayan group over here that they trade with that's not like as so it happens. Like this crossing of culture and mythology did happen, and that's likely why there is such similarities between when we talked about Cucumatz, Kukulkan, and Quetzalcoatl, right? You know, or like here, like even though one of the CEs specifies I'm not that jaguar god, there's the kind of this historical perspective from some scholars. Perhaps Tezcatlipoca is just the Aztec version of this jaguar god that was present in all three of these cultures, right? Or is he Kawil, you know, and Xipetl, whatever the other one was, you know? So it's, I can't deny my jerk reaction would not be to use that third. I would not want to keep him set up in that third thing. And I would not have that necessarily on display, but I'm open to if someone were like, if someday someone were to like, you know, send me like writings about it and research that tells me that no, actually this was like, you know, we've seen this depiction before. This is, you know, a thing. And I'd be like, okay, I was not aware of that. And you know, good for the artist if it was intentional for going that far, you know. But they are three very different arts, which is really weird because like we looked at Ketz at the very beginning and Kukulkan, and Ketz, it's basically the same art all the way through.
Kukulkan just changes her clothes a little.
Yeah, no, this was like three different arts.
Her final form is technically her second form with the cape on.
Yeah, whereas this was like Motorcycle Ares from Percy Jackson.
White Black Panther.
Yeah, Black Panther plus Laputa Castle in the Sky,
yeah.
And then Apocalypto. Like, those three very different things.
Look, you gotta give them variety on that one.
Yeah, that is true. You really spread the spectrum. Yeah. What do you feel about it?
Me? I mean, I obviously don't have as many cultural thoughts here. I find the discussion around him interesting because I do think Type Moon has had a general weakness when it comes to the Americas in general and how
and Australia.
Even like getting into the non like continental like Hawaii. Our representation in Hawaii is BB Pele.
Yeah, gnarly.
So I do think Type Moon has a distinct and noticeable weakness when it comes to the Americas. And the one that they have tried has been Mesoamerica.
You would think they would have gotten Hawaii right.
Yeah. But the only one they've really given a big shot has been Mesoamerica. And it's interesting to see that Mesoamerica has so much. There's a lot of discussion around how they maybe didn't do Mesoamerica and like South America like quite so well. Like they maybe did them a little dirty in some cases.
As far as I can tell so far, based on all the characters I've met, they didn't do South America at all.
They didn't.
Like this is not Inca. This is not any South American native group. These are not any South
American. They did Mesoamerica and Aztec and
Yeah.
then messed up with the South America. So it's
Yeah.
it's interesting to see where they tried and then just in some cases really fell on their face.
Yeah.
I absolutely can't. I don't like the watercolor artwork. I get what they're going for, but it just doesn't like blend well with the rest of FGO. And even with FGO's multiple art styles.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I like the CEs. I like the way he looks in the different CEs. I like the way that the sprites look, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like once you like resaturate the color.
Yeah.
I love that. Like I made the joke. He kind of looks like Fion's like brother and Daeon's brother. It does. You could put them in a row and you'd be look the three blonde siblings.
But the card art and by extension the character sprites and story.
Yeah.
Are a little rough in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what can you do?
Honestly,
it is taking everything in my soul not to just break out into the song.
Do it.
Rah, rah, Rasputin, lover of the Russian queen. There was a cat that really was gone.
I was going to be a little more subtle than that, but okay.
What are you going to go with?
There lived a certain man
in Russia long ago. He was big and strong, and his eyes were flaming gold. Most people looked at him with terror and despair, but to Moscow chicks, he was such a lovely bear. I'll pick which one to use later.
Look, I'm not that mad at giving it away. Just we gave it away. I'm not that mad at giving it away because he is this year's New Year's servant coming up. So
and it will be our New Year's video.
Yeah.
So
we're being timely. We know we're being timely. Get what little ad revenue we can for late December, early January.
And that song is just so good.
Yeah.
Like enjoy it, love it, live it. I would do the dance if I had enough space. We'll see you guys later.